The Murdaugh murder case. Well, he's found guilty. Well, we're going to talk about him being guilty. We're going to talk about some dogs. And we're even going to talk about some body bags as we get you up to date on exactly what has happened in the Murdaugh murder case. This and more on this edition of Charlie Crime Buster. Well, it's what some people are calling, they're calling it the fastest minutes in podcasting.
Expressed in this podcast are those solely of individuals interviewed and participating in this show and do not represent those of Peacemaker Network and Charlie Crimebuster. All individuals described or mentioned in the podcast should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This podcast contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. We're talking about the Murdaugh murder. By now you all know the jury is in. Boy, they were on a fast track to justice, were they not? In just about 3 hours, they came back with the verdict. They found him guilty of murdering his wife, Maddie, and his son, Paul. A terrible, terrible, terrible day for justice in the fact that it is so sad that this happened, but a good day for justice in the fact that it appears that justice has been done. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the smoking gun. That's right, the smoking gun. The one thing that I think more than any other thing that pushed this jury over the edge. And remember, according to jurors, they were not all on the same page at the very beginning, but I believe this is the one thing that pushed them all across the line to the guilty verdict. We're going to share that with you in just a moment later on in the podcast. But right now, it's time for us to talk about the Crazy Crook story. We give a Crazy Crook story every single week to kind of lighten the load. Well, I want to tell you about this one that happened back in my home state of Tennessee, there where the Tennessee Vols are, the big orange country. There was this guy who was going around breaking into homes, and boy, he was causing the cops quite a hassle. They had been on his trail, but they just were not able to nab him with the evidence. They had no idea who it was. They just didn't have the evidence to really bring him in. But they got enough evidence, at least probable cause, to make an arrest. They brought him in, and now it's time for the interrogation. Oh, today we cops call that an interview, but whatever way you want to look at it, it is an interrogation. And they had him there in the chair, sweating it out, going this and that. And by the way, cops can lie in that interrogation room if they want to get a greater good out of that lie in order to get evidence or maybe even a confession. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it is legal for cops to do so. Well, the police officers, they had him right there at the table. They were talking to him using all of their skills of negotiating and interviewing. And finally, they brought up one of the old adages, one of the ones that cops have used all across the country. They said to him, well, if you say you're telling the truth, if you say you were not around any of those places when those houses were broke into, then if you're telling the truth, then I guess you wouldn't mind to take a lie detector's test, would you? You see, that's a good one, because what can they say? If they say, no, I won't take a lie detector's test, it almost says that they're lying. Yet, if they say, yes, I will, and they are lying, well, where are they then? Well, this particular thief, he thought he would call their bluff. You see, it was out there in the county. It was a nighttime when they were doing the interview. Surely no lie detector test could be done right away. Give him a little time to get his story straight, maybe even to think about getting a hold of an attorney. So he just right up and said, yep, I don't mind. I'll take a lie detector's test because I'm telling the truth. Well, then the cop turned to the other guys and called down the hallway, well, bring it on in, guys. Bring the lie detector test. Bring it on. Bring the machine in. And then you could hear the wheels coming down the hallway. Now what is this crazy crook going to do? He sees now that these guys are serious. They've got the machine. They're bringing it down the hallway. Oh, he's sweating now, and before the machine almost gets to the door, he says, all right, you guys got me. I did it. please go easy on me. I'm going to cooperate with you. I'm going to tell you where everything is that I've taken. I'm going to give you my associates. I'm going to give you everything. Just please work a good deal for me. Help me out. So this crazy crook, he caved in. Now, you say, why are you calling him crazy? Well, I'm calling him crazy, my friend, because that wasn't a lie detector's machine coming down the hallway. It was, yep, wait for it. It was the copy machine. That's right, the copy machine. And so this guy, he sweats it out, he blurts it out, he confesses, not because a lie detector's machine is coming his way. He confesses because it's a copy machine. Yep, he's our crazy crook, and I know this is true, you see, because I was that cop. I was that cop that was interrogating that particular suspect. And believe me, friend, that trick did work. We got a confession. So, my friend, on the Charlie Crime Buster podcast, our Crazy Crook Award goes to that crazy thief back in Tennessee who didn't have enough sense to know the difference between a lie detector's machine and a copy machine. This is indeed Charlie Crime Buster's Crazy Crook of the Week. All right, friend, back to our main focus now. After a trial that spanned 28 days, it was only just a few hours before the jury came back with the sentence. Guilty. Guilty was the sentence. And Judge Clifton Newman, well, he sentenced this disgraced South Carolina lawyer. Oh, Alex, well, he sentenced him to 2 consecutive life sentences. That's for the murder of his wife and his son. Did that this past Friday. Less than 24 hours after that jury had found him guilty in the slaying of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh. Now, Newman, the judge, he had a lot of things to say. He said each of the punishments applied to the rest of your natural life, and he added that the sentences, they are consecutive. And that's with no possibility of parole. He was going to make sure that Alex didn't live to see the light of day. The judge announced that punishment after Murdaugh, he had to talk to the court. And here's what he said. Even with all of this, he's still maintaining his innocence. He says, "Good morning, Your Honor. I am innocent. I would never hurt my Maggie. I would never hurt my son, Paul. Thank you." Well, his words are pretty empty now, both to the jury and to the world. And no doubt about it, he will appeal the conviction. Now, that court session, it started like 9:30 a.m., and Newman, he did say that he would render his sentence after any victim's impact statements. Well, but the prosecutor, Mr. Waters, he said, well, the state did not have anybody who wanted to deliver a victim's statement. Let's get on with it. Let's get on with it. He said the depravity, the callousness, the selfishness of these crimes are stunning. That's what Waters said. And he added that Murdaugh continued to lie, showed no remorse. And then the prosecutor, pointing to Murdaugh, he said, a man like this should never be allowed to be free among law-abiding citizens again. Now, Newman, the judge, he said this, and I'm quoting him now, "As I sit here in this courtroom, look around the many portraits of judges and other court officials, and reflect on the past, that over the past century, your family," talking to Alex, "including you, have been prosecuting people here in this courtroom." And then get this. He said this. He said, you know what? He didn't say you know what, but this is what he said. He said, many have received the death penalty, probably, get this, for lesser conduct. He even urged Murdaugh to explain himself honestly in open court, said it's opportunity for him to give closure to him and his family. But Murdaugh, again, he said, I respect the court, but I'm innocent. And then Newman said something else, probably the way that Murdaugh was maybe justifying this in his mind. He said it might have been not have been you. That's what the judge said of the person who committed terrible acts. He said perhaps, talking about his drug addiction, that his drug addiction maybe caused him to be another person. He said maybe this was you being the monster that was turned a monster by drugs. Well, the judge said it was heartbreaking to see Murdaugh going from being portrayed as a grieving father to a convicted killer. But don't to say it's unfortunate. You had such a lovely family, such friendly people, including you, And to go from that to this, yep, 28 days was the trial, only a few hours. Jury agreed unanimously that he was guilty. Now let's just take a moment and talk about the case a little bit. I'm going to talk about some weaknesses in both the prosecution and the defense. First of all, the prosecution case, well, it was a little bit weak, really, to be honest with you. You see, the case actually turned on circumstantial evidence and lies. You see, Murdaugh even admitted to lying to investigators about his alibi, and he shifted that version on events about his paranoia stemming from his addiction. But during the trial, the jurors heard testimony from victims of Murdaugh's financial schemes and his colleagues at the former law firm. So they're basically building their whole case on the fact that he's a lying person, that he's deceptive. They didn't have a whole lot of real evidence to bring to the jury. That was the weak part. But they did a very marvelous job of taking a weak case, turning it into a strong case by going at it from a little different avenue. They suggested to the jury that the reason that Alec had done these murders was to take the spotlight off of his financial crimes, to give him a little breathing room so he could figure out how to go from there, to get a little sympathy from the community, and that was the motive for him killing his own wife and his own son. Pretty far-fetched, isn't it? But not when the prosecution brought on a whole lot of other evidence of his lying. They talked about the fact how he lied to his clients, how he lied to his firm, how he lied to just about everybody he came in contact with. And they brought that before the jury again and again and again. They pounded that lying home. So, even though the prosecution had a very weak case, miraculously they were able to take the character of their own defendant that they were prosecuting and use that character assassination as a way to sway the jury. And I have to admit, at first I had my doubts that this was really going to work with the jury. I was afraid that they were going to get so overwhelmed by all the financial crimes that they would come to the conclusion, well, we know he's guilty of the financial crimes, but you haven't said a whole lot about the fact that you have evidence that he killed his wife and son. And would somebody really kill their wife and son just to get the spotlight off of them? They were thinking, perhaps to themselves, nobody would do that. But yet, this prosecution stayed at it. They kept driving that home, and that was their strength. The weakness on the defense? It's not hard to find the weakness on this defense team. They made the biggest mistake, I believe, of the entire trial when they put Alec on the stand. Now, of course, the person themselves that's being prosecuted has the right to decide whether to go on the stand or not. And as I said last week, most people think that they can sway a jury if they just get up there and talk, and most of the times they can't. That's why attorneys always push for their own defendants never to take the stand, because there's so many ways the prosecutor can twist them up. But either this defense did not know what it was doing, or Alec insisted and they could not stop him. But when he got on that stand, my friend, it was all over for sure. You see, that is the smoking gun. Because that video that was taken by Paul's phone, where they thought that they heard his voice in it. You see, up to this point, the jury had thought they heard the voice, or people thought maybe that was his voice. Thinking that that's the voice and knowing that that's the voice is two different things. However, when Alec got on the stand, yep, he admitted he was there. He admitted that he lied to all those people. He lied to the cops. He lied to the prosecutors. He lied even to his own family. He lied to everybody. He said, I wasn't there. But that video, that Snapchat video that was taken basically because the dog had caught a chicken and Paul thought he ought to put it on Snapchat. I guess you could say a dog was really what brought Alec to justice. A dog caught the chicken. Paul thought that was cute. Going to make a Snapchat out of it. You could hear his dad's voice in the background. But now, wait a minute. Before Alec got on the stand, it was, well, maybe that's his voice, maybe it's not. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But when Alec got on the stand, he knew he was caught in a lie, and so he thought he would brave it out and say, yep, I lied about that, but I really didn't kill them. At that point, the jury, they weren't going to believe another word that this man said, no matter what he said that day. When he admitted that he had lied about being there, my friend, that was the nail in the coffin. That was exactly what it took to get those other jurors across the line. When that was brought up in the jury room that this guy lied about his alibi, he lied that he was there, so here he is. He has the means. Now he has a motive, according to prosecution, and he has the wherewithal to commit this terrible crime. Who else could it be? He was there at the scene. Nobody else was. So, there it comes. Guilty. Guilty on both counts. And boy, the judge threw the book at him. And the judge reminded him that he had sent, well, far more other people his family had sent to the death, had given the death sentence for doing lesser crimes than he had done. He did mention that in the trial as he was talking to Alec. You see, this family for so long had gotten away with so much. And there are even other body bags to talk about, isn't there? Yep, other body bags related to this family. It goes back way back to 16 when a guy by the name of Stephen Smith, he was found dead by the roadside. Now they're looking back into that. At first people thought maybe it's a hit and run, but now they're saying that he could have had some sort of relationship with, well, Alec's son, Buster. You see, Stephen was gay. Maybe the family didn't want to get that out, so maybe even the family was involved in killing Stephen Smith. Now, there's no real evidence pointing to that, but at first there was no real evidence pointing to Alec killing his own wife and son. Will they find evidence that ties that body that was found in a body bag, Stephen Smith, that young man, 16 years of age, way back there before much of this started? Then next, there's the beautiful young lady that was in the boat that night when Alec's son Paul was steering the boat, and he was drunk, way over the limit. He was irresponsible. Even those teens on the boat had tried to get him to stop steering. Let us steer. You're in no shape to steer this boat. But boy, he would not have it. No, he was a Murdaugh, and it was his boat. And so he crashed that boat into a bridge. Threw a young lady out, beautiful young lady, Mallory Beach. They found her body a week later. Paul was facing charges for manslaughter as he awaited trial. Then he was murdered. So that's another body that's tied to this family. And then there's the body, the body of Miss Satterfield. She was the housekeeper. She had been with the family for some time. And allegedly, she tripped over the dogs down the steps and hit her head. Only thing was, Alec even profited off of that. He told her boys, sue my insurance, you can get some money. He even sent them to an attorney. No, he didn't handle the case himself. That would, of course, not be appropriate. But he sent him to a friend, and he and his friend had already made up their mind they were going to make some big bucks off this case of suing his own insurance company. And they did. At first, the rumor was that they had actually received $500,000. The only problem is Miss Satterfield's boys, her family knew nothing about that whatsoever. Boy, when they found out where they really lived, $500,000, we never heard anything about that. You see, that attorney could do everything on their behalf, sign all the papers. He could even keep the fact that they had that fee coming. And he did keep the fact from them. But then, all sorts of civil suits started flying from the boat crash, from other things. And guess what? They found out that Alec, over his housekeeper, who allegedly, quote, fell over the dogs, down the steps, hit her head, died. But they found out it wasn't $500,000. but it was several $1,000,000. Yep, this was the kind of man that Alec Murdaugh was. He was stealing from the family. Now people are wondering, did she really just trip over the dogs down the steps? Or was there something more sinister to it? Was there more evil involved in it? Was her death an accident? Or was it merely a calculated event in this family that fell so far from grace? So here's the body bags. There's Stephen. There was this beautiful young lady, this Miss Mallory Beach, and then there's the housekeeper, Satterfield. Other body bags tied to this victim. Will, in the coming days, we see that these deaths are not really what they appear to be? Will we see that the Murdaugh family had something to do with those deaths as well? Well, we may, and then again, we may never know. But we do know one thing. It's not all over. Not all over with the Murdaugh family. There's lots of other things that can be happening. And so now, Alec Murdaugh, he's on the way. Well, he's already in the clinker. He's already going to prison. They're going to bring him out. They're going to talk about these other financial crimes, and almost he admitted all of those almost on the stand. And I don't know how that's going to play with any of the proceedings coming down the pike. Whichever, this is a bad man taken out of society, put where he needs to be in a cell, where he will spend the rest of his miserable life being told what to do. This man of prestige, this man of power, suddenly has no prestige, has no power, and is in jail exactly where he should be. There are some people who think that that's even worse than getting the needle, That's even worse, having to live day in and day out as a caged animal almost in jail, confined, is almost worse than getting the needle. I don't know. What do you say? The good book says, well, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. There are lots of us that do believe in capital punishment, and if there was ever a time that capital punishment should be used, I agree it should be used in this one. After all, his family used capital punishment to kill a lot of other people that did not have the big degrees, the big lawyers, and who could fight like he fought. Well, that's another time for another story. Well, right now, we're getting ready to close the book on the Murdaugh family. And now you know. You know that this guy was brought to justice, actually by a dog. Yep, the dog who chased the chicken. They got Paul to go to Snapchat, talk about it, heard the voice of Alec in the background. Then, a very, very costly mistake. Alec thought he could get on the stand and just explain it all away. After all, he is Alec Murdaugh. I am a people person, he said. I can sway that jury, but he didn't. And now, finally, justice. Justice for Maddie, justice for Paul, maybe even justice for others coming down the bend. Well, there are always lessons that we learn from these podcasts, and there are some lessons certainly here. That is, my friend, that you need to keep your priorities straight. Family is more important than anything. The love of our family is more valuable than gold, more valuable than money, more valuable than anything else. So, as I say so often on these podcasts, take some moments this week to let the people you know around you that you love them, to show them that love, to hold them one more time, to look them in the eye and say, I love you. Because there are families out there that would give anything in the world if they had that opportunity to do it just one more time. You and I have that opportunity. Folks, let's get busy this week just loving the people that love us. And let's really focus on what life is all about. Well, this is Charlie Crimebuster wrapping up the Murdaugh murders. And the judge has spoken. He's going away for a long, long, long time, the rest of his natural life. And you and I will go away to fight another day, to live our lives with those that we love. So until this time, next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert, yep. For the life you save, it may be your very own.